I'm Nikita. I am the VP of Sales at an organization called PartnerStack. We help companies launch and scale channel and partner programs across the board. It's a really interesting question. PartnerStack's always never had too long of a sales cycle. We've never been one of those organizations where a sales cycle takes 12 months, for example. But on average, you're seeing a sales cycle of around, 30 to 60, in some cases 60 to 90 days, depending on a lot of things that are there. I think what we're really trying to do is we're really trying to capture and show value up front, right? So we're doing that in a number of ways. Or one, we want to continue to educate the market on, how do you be effective with a tool like PartnerStack and how do you do your job better, right? Or how can we accelerate the work that you do or you're currently doing today before you even talk to a salesperson, right? So 70% of buyers, 75% of buyers today do a lot of their own research. And so we want to be able to enable that research, give them as much information upfront as possible to so that when they actually come into the sales cycle, they're fairly educated about, at least at a minimum, what PartnerStack is, what their partner program does, what their strategy for their partnership channel is, and drive that forward. But additionally, we also want to give folks the ability to kind of feel and like actually like experience the tool that we have. So something that we rolled out with our product team a little earlier this year were, basically trial accounts. And I know that doesn't sound like anything novel, right? There's a lot of organizations that do, trial via, product-led growth. We hadn't prior to this year, but it was a really it was an accelerant in a lot of ways. We saw, a lot of folks continuing to bring in their team members early on in the process. More people got educated on the tool and the business use case for the tool a lot sooner. And that kind of also helped us kind of increase and accelerate sales cycles throughout the year. So I agree. You want to do everything that you can to kind of shorten sales cycles. I think for us, what's really been effective is continuing to educate the market in advance, give everybody kind of a feel for the tool as soon as possible, right? So that they can really try to understand, like, okay, does this fit the needs for my use case? And also just continuing to try to be, clear and transparent with customers when they come into the funnel on, what is your timeline? What are you looking to, like, when are you looking to move? And how do we make this an easy decision for both yourself and the team?
Hi, my name is Joe McNeill. I'm CRO here at Influ2. We do contact focused advertising to help start sales and marketing teams align and improve prospecting conversion rates. There's only so much you can do to impact your sales cycle length, right? I think at the end of the day, it's the prospect that's going to dictate when they can actually execute. But there's things you can do to help sort of shepherd the deal along. I think engaging with the entire buying group a lot is a helpful way because you really cut down on a lot of the time that the conversations have. I think when you're in a sales cycle and you're suggesting next steps, suggest those next steps for tomorrow, not next week. Just like those simple things really help with sales cycle length. But like if they have budget cycles, if they have compelling events, if they have things like that, there's only so much you can do, right? So I think you need to focus on the things that you can control, and that's engaging with all of them, scheduling next steps as quickly as possible, and not like unnecessarily delaying, the conversations and stages. But I think there's also a moment that if you push too hard on timeline, that you can turn them off too, because part of it is like both parties should want a healthy deal to come through the other side, and a healthy deal sometimes takes a little more time than a fast deal. So I think there's a lot of things you can do to control velocity, but I also think you need to accept the fact that you don't want to push too hard on that.
Excited to be here today. So yeah, I am Matt Wood. I've spent about a decade in SaaS, really helping scale revenue growth across multiple organizations and DevOps, cybersecurity, and data observability, specifically all the way from sub 1 million upwards of 100 million plus, resulting in 4 successful mergers or acquisitions. Yeah, so I think the first thing is you got to look at where is the bottlenecks in the sales cycle, and I'm a big, MEDDPICC for opportunity qualification. So really looking at, how are you qualifying the opportunity, but also when you're able to track things on a stage by stage basis. This is why sales stage velocity is so important. Understanding where things bottleneck. So for us, in prior roles, things were stalling out in the POV process or POC process. So we really looked at how are we running those and making sure we have a very clear playbook, making sure that we're getting up to the economic buyer, and finding ways to just shorten things at every single cycle and analyzing that as well.
My name's Jeff Kirchick. I am the VP of Sales for Allwhere, which is an IT asset lifecycle management software company based in New York City, about 45-ish employees. And I've been working in software sales for about 15 years, which has been my career. I have been fortunate to be a part of multiple exits. Spent half my career at a Y Combinator company called NextCaller, which was acquired by Pindrop Security a few years ago. I also wrote a book around that time called Authentic Selling: How to Use the Principles of Sales in Everyday Life, which I think accurately predicted the coming wave of artificial intelligence in the world of sales and how people would need to lean into a more authentic selling style in order to succeed. So that's a little bit about me. Well, on a high level, I'll talk about this more on like a high level and then on a more granular level. So on a high level, any good sales leader should be building out different stages with very clear exit criteria, not only measuring their success across all of these stages and their conversion rates, but also the velocity. The velocity is the speed in which you cross different stages. And if we're seeing that velocity is really high in one stage and slow in another one, we need to be able to start to diagnose that. Because what you're going to find is that within your sales process, what's slowing you down there might be a common trend. It might be all in one stage where you're commonly getting slowed down as opposed to just being slow everywhere, right? And so that's number one, is because if we can immediately diagnose where we are having challenges in our sales process, now we can start to understand maybe why that is and what we can do better about it. I do believe that on a more granular level, that the things that you ought to be doing to try to reduce time in your sales process actually all come down to the beginning of it. It's really about who you target and how you manage discovery in those opportunities. If you're really good, you can collect enough data to build what I would call like a grading and qualification system, where you have a really firm understanding of like what makes somebody a really good lead. In theory, what you can do is look at your closed won data and your closed loss data. But within your closed won data, you could even say, who are the fastest leads to close? What were the top 10, top 20 customers in terms of speed? What are the attributes that they share in common, right? Like what are things that they all share? And from there, you can start to actually try to find lookalikes. Was it a certain leader that had a business driver at the time that they needed to solve? And if so, is there intent data out there that I can leverage to go find people that have that business driver today? Are there people searching on the internet around this business driver that I can identify and reach out to right now? So I think that's really the simplest way to reduce sales cycle. And then obviously the other one I mentioned is like better discovery. I think really most sales problems come down to qualification and discovery. If you don't understand what the buying process is, the pain, the implications of the pain, then you are going to struggle to get the customer there along the way. But if they're able to get that right away, you're going to accelerate the sales process down the road. So to me, that is the fundamental way to think about reducing sales cycles.
Hi, everyone. My name is Prakhar. I'm a part of Whatfix. As you may know, Whatfix is a digital adoption platform. We work with companies to simplify their end user experience. Our vision is to make technology user savvy. And that's what we do. My role is I take care of new business for North America and EMEA. Started as the first employee of the company. Been about 10 years I've been with Whatfix. Yeah, the market has been crazy right now. I think there are all kinds of surprises coming our way when we are dealing with enterprises. And not that it's new for us. We work with about hundreds of Fortune 1000 companies globally. So nothing new for us, but the challenges in this market are real. To answer your question, see, few things. We have always been focused on, processes, and one of it is we believe in mutual success plans. So mutual success plans is where you lay down the bunch of steps from today to what's going to happen until signatures, and with every step laid out, with every stakeholder mapped out, so that then you do the backward math from there to see, okay, if let's say you are going to be live by, let's say, August mid, we have only 3 weeks remaining, but we want to get to this 1, 2, 3, and 4th step. So if we are wanting to go live by then, we need to do this at this pace, and are we aligned? And that doesn't happen verbally. We actually run it like a project on a spreadsheet where we'll lay down all the steps, all the internal stakeholders will be mapped. Like the details we get into are to an extent of where we even map out the holiday schedules of our prospects. Because if somebody is going to be out for 2 weeks and you've not baked that in, everything that you are planning will get derailed by 2 weeks if they are an important stakeholder to your buying process. So that's one. That's worked out really well for us. To give you a sense of details, sometimes often in sales, you will hear reps say stuff like, oh, I promise, my prospect has promised me this will get signed by Friday, and today's a Wednesday. Most managers will be okay with that statement because, yeah, the contract is getting signed in a couple of days. We are not. At Whatfix, we get into the details of, okay, what's going to happen between now and Friday? Are any other approvals needed internally? What's the paper process look like? Is it going to go via DocuSign, or is it a hand signature process that's going to happen? Is the buyer's EA going to help them with it, or is it a direct process? If it is a direct process, what other approvals are needed? If other approvals are needed, have they approved it already, and do they know about the project? If not, do we need to do something about it? So I think it's just going in a spiral, being paranoid about what we do. And when you get into the granularity, that's when, your predictability becomes better, your forecast becomes better. So this is part one of my answer, which is mutual success plans. The second part is in enterprises. Often there are distributed teams who are assigned different parts of a project. So say, for example, for a project like Whatfix, there will be a separate InfoSec team that is responsible for doing the security implications and other aspects. There will be a legal team, there will be a vendor onboarding team, and so on. Now, after you have received the vendor of choice after a certain stage, you can easily get to a point of, separating these processes out and run some of these in parallel. Like the vendor onboarding team doesn't necessarily need to talk to the InfoSec team. They can do their own thing, unless in certain cases, the process is sequential, which is rare. But these processes can all run in parallel. So now when you run these processes in parallel, each process that could have taken 2 weeks in isolation alone in a sequence, and the whole process could have been 6 weeks, you've shortened that to 2 weeks now because you tried to run them in parallel. So that's another way we try it. So these are the 2 ways that come to mind immediately that gives us better predictability. There are still surprises, not that our world is perfect, but we try what we try.
I'm Bethany Ibarra. I spent the first kind of half of my career working across the business cycle at a multinational technology company called Motorola in a few divisions. And that led to uncovering an opportunity that led me to build my first P&L, launch my first market. And that's where I've kind of remained in commercial leadership ever since at Lenovo, Google, and of course, Motorola. My most recent role was the Chief Revenue Officer at an engineering firm that designed and developed machine learning systems. Yeah, great question, because sales cycles, most people are reporting they're elongating, not shortening, just by the virtue of the larger buying committees, budgets that are scrutinized, budget releases that often you won't have control. And the people you're engaging with at the enterprise won't have control over that approval cycle and when it happens. So, you have to focus on what you can control. So even in the midst of all that, as that interface of your company, having that explorer mentality, you don't work there. Even if you used to work with that company, things could have changed. Processes could have changed. There could be another signature that's required. So, staying curious, asking questions, it can be that simple. I had actually someone in my professional network reach out to me a couple weeks ago. His company was starting to move up funnel into the enterprise, had been serving a lot of, kind of mid-market, smaller companies, and he was running into snags. They were getting verbal approval on sign off of a new contract with a new customer. And it was taking a month plus to actually get the contract signed. So every step of the way, there's an opportunity. So some quick tips I gave him that seemed to be effective. As soon as you get that verbal approval, schedule that in-person kickoff. That does a couple things. One, it provides that high touch, personalization to your kickoff, or, initial training or initial, engagement of the cross-functional team. But it's also a trigger for your key stakeholder to push for sign off internally, because it's usually not one sign off. So there's a lot of different tactics that you can use along the way, and staying really vigilant, asking good questions. It's, that being an explorer through that journey, and not ever assuming that your key stakeholder, first of all, knows the full process, or that the process has stayed static.